Okay, this is the castle. That's where all the stuff that I use or anybody who's doing SEL comes from. And now the State Department, we were on the SEL team to construct the guide for SEL implementation. You have what the district's supposed to do, what the school's supposed to do, and what the classroom's supposed to do. And a lot of it is from the castle. Now, when you go in the middle, these are the 5 components that I'm going to be talking about, but today I'm going to be talking about relationship skills. So, we'll go through here. The first one, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills. These are just the definitions of what they are. And today we're going to talk about establish and maintain healthy, supportive relationships and effectively navigate settings with diverse individuals or groups, and or groups. But I have a little activity we're going to do a little bit later on with these five competencies, 5 components. Relationship skills. Examples of relationship skills: collaborative problem solving, communication, including listening. And when we talk about listening, we talk about mindfulness. That's another day. But we talk about this a lot when we're listening, when I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to you. I may be looking at you and I look engaged, but I'm not listening to you. And I know you have that with your kids. You better be listening to me right now. No, I won't abuse you, not yet. But anyway, Alex cut a lot of this out. But anyway, you have to be intentional to listen to your students. And she was talking about saying you're sorry to your kids, and that's good. It's okay, because they'll know that you're human too, that we all make mistakes. It's okay for them to make mistakes. It's okay for us to make mistakes. I was a special ed teacher, 4th grade teacher, principal, special ed director, Head Start, and now landed here. God bless them, they have me. I love them. But anyway, so when I was principal, and as a teacher, you got a classroom kids, you got 5 that want to tell you a good story every day, about something. So that's part of your procedures. Okay, I really want to hear your story, but we'll listen to it at lunch or at recess or something like that, but not to say, honey, just go sit down, even though you might want to. But so one day I was in the office there working, and I was out in the front office, and a little boy came. He's one of those storytellers, always had a story to tell me. And see, I didn't know all this. I mean, I just, by the grace of God, I'm a good person. That's why I like kids, and I treated them good, But if I was like some other people, I'm only kidding. But anyway, and we did, just by the grace of God. So he's looking at me, and he's telling me this story, and I've got 1,000 things to do. And I just look up at him, and I go, what? Like that. I'm a principal, and I say that to a child. Of course, that was 30 years ago. But anyway, did anybody? No. But anyway, so, and I just see the look on his face like, I can't believe she said that to me, because I've always been, listening to his stories and stuff. And I said, hey, I'm sorry. I'm just so busy, but tell me what you need to tell me now, But I deflated that kid in a half of a second, And we can think back, teachers we like, teachers you had good relationships with, and it's not all roses and sunshine. You can still, you can still instruct them. You have to. You can still discipline them. You have to. You can still you can still have behavior management and all that stuff, and you can still love them. You can still like them, and you can still have a relationship with them. It doesn't mean I like you, I'm going to let you do whatever you want to do, unless you're my pet. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so that's what, and we've always said this. Kids, they need structure. They want structure. When I was growing up, we had 11 o'clock curfew. Of course, we didn't have phones, so you had to get home because they don't know where you are. And, or they'll come looking for you, They don't have them trackers back then. Anyway, so we had 11 o'clock curfew. You had to get home. And a girl that, was our friend and stuff, she had no curfew. And she equated that to her mother didn't care what time she got home, what she did. And she would say, I wish my mom cared. I wish she would give me a curfew. because it meant she loved her and she cared about her. I mean, whether she did or not, that was what she was thinking. But anyway, healthy, supportive relationships, that's the big thing, standing up for others. And that's what you want your classroom to do. You want them to be a good little group that they'll stand up and take up for each other. You know what I'm saying? I had a little boy or a little girl. She was special needs and she was something else, wasn't she, Bird? And if I told her to do anything, she'd call me Cruella de Vil. I think I had a little blonde streak maybe. It was back in the whatever. No joke, she did. And somebody called somebody Cruella de Vil. But anyway, she said, Miss Francis, I'm going to run away from this school and I'm never coming back, you know. So her classroom, those kids, they guarded her. They took care of her. She could beat them, whatever. It didn't bother them. They took care of her. So one day she had a sub, and the sub was not so nice to Natalie. And I was out that day. So the next morning, those kids come to my office. They said, Miss Francis, we really need to talk to you. I said, oh my God. Third graders. They said, you know that sub we had yesterday? She was mean to Natalie. I said, no, she was mean to that. Yes, she was mean and hateful to Natalie. I said, well, that's it. We won't get her back anymore. But they do. They had that camaraderie that they took care of each other. They took care of their classroom. And that's good. And you want to impress upon them to do that so they're not bullying each other. They're not making fun of each other. Because a kid who goes to school and is bullied every day, my God, how do they live? How do they survive it? I don't know. Bern was a bully. She'll know. How did... I know. Okay. How can we help students learn and build relationship skills? Just like anything else they were talking about, you got to have your strategies, you got to have your plan, you got to practice it. And building relationships is about more than understanding others. It's making people feel understood. That's the empathy part. If you can't put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you can't have empathy. That's my other video. And if you don't cry, I'll give you $1. Started to say $5, but no, that's too much. Okay, so it is empathy. And you look at these kids that come to school every day, and we taught in a socioeconomic, is poor, poverty. You know, our kids come from the hollers, and if you've ever been up some people live up hollers. It's not a big deal. There's a lot of them. But we took like buses. We'd take our teachers up the hollers and see where these kids live. They can't believe where some of these kids live. They can't believe they get to school. I mean, it's amazing. By the grace of God, they get to school. And here's the other thing. They come to school every day, and they face the same thing. If it's failure, if it's kids that don't like them, somebody's bullying them, they're facing that at home, what they come from. And then they get to school, and they got to go every day to that school, and they got to face all this. So who is their champions? We are their champions. We have to be.
We took our teachers to that every beginning of the year. We started last 2 years ago. We take our bus route with our teachers on them, like the day before school starts. And like all the kids come out, we wave at them and say, "Hey, we'll see you tomorrow," or Friday.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
And it's like our one of the streets from our bus routes are pretty low income, so those kids need it the most.
They're the ones that need it the most. And then when we're going to do some emotional poverty things, that's where kids of any status need it. They have emotional poverty, not physical or, But yeah, that is such a good idea. And it opens the teacher's eyes. I mean, and you have some teachers that haven't seen that, And if you're a new teacher, you're any teacher, you need to see that. You need to know that. And, okay, I was going to say something else. You made me think of it. Oh, I had a teacher. We went on a home visit, because sometimes you you go on a lot of home visits. I took a couple teachers with me. They didn't know where this little boy lived. I did. And you have to act like you're not surprised. You're not shocked at what you see. So he lived, up one of the hollers, and we went up there. And the teachers, they were in tears by the time we got back to the vehicle, and they had no idea. They knew it was bad, but they didn't know it was that bad. When I taught special ed, of course, when you teach special ed, you got to do a lot of home visits. We did home visits where you drove through the creek, and this was like 1980, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so little boy lived in a box trailer that you haul stuff. He lived in that. And you go in and you act like it's nothing that you haven't seen before. And then a little guy who lived, you had to drive through the creek. He lived up on the hill, and animals were just running in and out of the house. I mean, and then he's coming to school, and if I say, why do you not have a pencil? I told you to bring a, and I want to strangle teachers like that. We got to cut that out too. Okay, relationship skills sounds like clear communication, resolving conflicts, and that's something you got to learn. You got to learn to resolve conflicts, help your kids learn to resolve conflicts. Sharing of ideas, giving support, or standing up for each other. Relationship skills looks like kindness, and I got a whole other thing on kindness. Kindness and empathy, cooperation, culture, competency, leadership, avoiding negative peer pressure. Dear Lord, the peer pressure will kill you. Do you teach high school? Oh, well, it's all the way from kindergarten as soon as they figure out that they can do that. And making positive choices. These are all things that we have to work on with our kids. I won't give up on you, so don't give up on me. And that's kind of what Rita Pearson was talking about. Why building relationships in the classroom is so important. And I love all these graphic things. I pull these things out. I'm like, oh, I'm so frou-frou. She is not. She's black and white. But anyway, lumping kids together in a room all day to get along while learning it can be a tall order. But with consistent social-emotional instruction and practice, it becomes easier. That's kind of hard. You got that many kids, that many personalities. You got some strong, some, we established that building relationships is important for healthy, positive interactions, and developing the relationship skills helps us know how to interact with each other. Listen, kids are not the only ones who need relationship skills. You got to have that with your colleagues. Don't hang around. I'm just going to tell you this right up. Don't hang around somebody that's negative, because they'll pull you down and you'll be under your own shoes. You know what I'm saying? Get away from them, and just don't put up with that negativity. And like she was. Yeah, there's a lot of joy suckers out there. You're not a joy sucker. Okay. But anyway, and they will, because they like, misery loves company. If I hate my job, I want you to hate it too. If I don't like my kids, I want you not to like your kids either. So you just stand up against that. Just stand up against that. If they say something, you say, oh, my kids are doing great. I love my job. I love my kids, because you've got the most important job. And like she said, it's tough. It's tough.
One of the teachers I work with says, if you stand around the thunderhead, you're going to be struck by lightning. That means those people.
Oh, yeah. And you just want to punch them in the face when they come in. I mean, you don't, but I got to quit saying things out loud. Okay. Anyway, building relationships also serves as foundation to having a positive, healthy classroom environment. When students know how to build relationships with their classmates, everybody benefits. Collaborative problem solving. Interaction in an instant strategies. What is it? This is just a tool. And I will send this to you, but I don't have it ready to send to you right now. A set of pairing and grouping techniques that can be used on the fly to engage students. You want to have all that stuff ready. If you're going to do groups, how are you going to group them? Don't just all say, okay, you two get in a group, you two get in a group. You kind of got to have a system where maybe you got a strong person in a group. You kind of mix it up some. To enhance student learning by the use of well-designed pairing and grouping techniques, to foster interaction and collaboration in the room, to increase the sense of community among students. I tell you what, you can go, it's telling where you'll go. It's unbelievable if you develop a strong class community, and especially if your school does it, and you do it school-wide. But even if your next door neighbor is a nut, stop me. But anyway, your classroom, you have control over your classroom and what happens in there. 3 interactions in an instant techniques. Think, pair, share. And I think Dion did that, or somebody did think, pair, share. Was that you? Okay. this is a good one, and you can have kids assign seats, but you want to mix it up some. You might want to let them stay there a month. You might want to let them stay there a week and kind of, so they can get to know the other kids in their classrooms. So they're not, in 7th grade, I sat beside of a boy. Oh, you remember him, Bern? I thought he was the devil. I'm still not. The jury's still out. But anyway, when I sat beside of him, and I was one of those kids that never talked, believe it or not. But anyway, he would just punch me in the arm. And I'm like, dear God. And I wouldn't tell the teacher. And, he's got this little bony fist. My arms weren't this big then, But anyway, so you kind of got to mix it up and you kind of got to watch who does what. Okay. This is a good one. Give one, get one. Somebody else did that. For example, what are the attributes of a good friend? And you can do this with your content. Why are plants important to us in the world? What are some effective strategies promoting student engagement? And, you can change that to however you want to present it to your kids. And this is just fast. Clock partners. I have this. Bern, clock partners.
Yes, you have that.
Get it?
Okay, I'll do it right now.
Because I got to have a drink of Mountain Dew. Right here, I think.
Yes. It is.
How much time have I got in here? How much? 1:15, that's it? Oh, dear God. Okay, I can do it. Give me a little juice here. There you go. 1:15? Who talked you out of that? Okay, now where's the thing, the clocks that go with it? Oh, it's on the back. This is just a good little activity to get your kids to know each other, and it gives you the directions. Keeps them from going to the same kids over and over. And listen, we do that. If I'm in a training, I'm going to sit beside of my friends. I just do it unless they say, okay, 1, 2, 3, you've got to sit with somebody else. I'm like, oh my God, 1, 2, 3. But anyway, this, that helps your kids, because I've thought over the years, why kids, they gravitate to certain kids, but they don't get a chance to meet everybody, to know everybody, and to widen their scope.
And it's hard to step out.
It is.
It's hard to step out more over time.
It is.
Easy to stay in your lane.
That's exactly right. But if you let them practice it, just make an activity out of it, and especially the clock partners, that's good. So once students have completed their clock sheets, they can attach them to the inside of their notebooks for easy safekeeping. When it's time for the students to pair up throughout the day, all you need to tell them is which clock partner they can pair up. Okay, 12 o'clock. You're going to pair up with somebody, Andy. You're Andy, right? Mm-hmm. Andy and Eric, they're going to pair up. So, that's a good little activity. And there it is. Communication, including listening, and we talked about that. Instructional routines, and that we talked about that in with the procedures and stuff. But provide a lot of variety of opportunities for collaborative work, such as cooperative learning, service learning, project-based learning. Use strategies to actively involve everyone in group projects. If you get that one leader in a project, she's going to do all the work. And the other kid's like, hey, take it home, do it. I don't care, But you kind of got to watch, because I could be one of those kids. But anyway, you want to, everybody get in on that and do that. So, you're my favorite teacher. We talked about this, you can think about your favorite teacher when you were growing up. Like Bernadette and I both have the same favorite teacher. She was funny. She was good. We learned English. Maybe not very well, but she was good. She did drama. She did art, all the things that we love. Yeah, she did the best she could. I mean, that was, oh my God, centuries ago. But anyway, kids don't change, though. Maybe the teachers change and the circumstances change, but kids, well, they got a lot more to deal with now, so. But here's the thing I was going to tell you about this. When you think about your favorite teacher, even if you were in kindergarten. So you guys don't have to go back that far. You never forget them. And you never forget the teacher that you can't stand, that was mean to you or treated you unfairly. Huh? Walked you to the bathroom. I said, what are you doing? Okay, see, you know, those are things you don't forget, you know.
We actually have a friend, and her first grade teacher was
Oh.
horrible to her, apparently, and she's not.
And it scarred her.
She's still
Sh-
scarred from that.
But thank God her second grade teacher saved her life,
Yes.
you know.
But she's not
They can do that to
reminded everything
kids.
the first grade teacher did at all. She remembers everything.
Everything. I remember my first grade teacher. I loved her though. What? Locked you in the bathroom? My gosh. That's child abuse. No, you won't.
That was traumatizing.
Write her name down or his name. Are they still alive? We'll track them down. Okay, I can understand that. Thank God somebody had the sense to do that. Oh, don't think I went through a fit as my kid and they locked it in the bathroom? What, a couple days? Yeah, a little kid, you know, it could be 2 minutes and that's traumatic.
I cried every day. She would put my picture, she would put a picture of my family, put it on my desk, and it was something that I'm crying for.
I want to be with these people. Why are you putting their picture in front of me? I'm definitely going to cry. Yeah, I love my third grade. My second grade teacher was a sub. Attila the sub. Anyway, she was, you know, when they write your name on the board and put you 3 marks. I was a kid. I never said squat. I never said anything, you know, because I was very quiet. And that was before I blossomed. And then I started talking. No, that was a big thing back then. So, you know, you go to lunchroom and you go to lunch and you get finished with your lunch. You line up on this line. I happened to be the first one in the line. I really wasn't familiar with the rule that you don't go on out to recess. Yeah. So I trucked on out to recess. And so all of a sudden, I'm out there by myself. I'm like, "Phew." And then all the kids just come rushing out the door, running to me. Oh, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You weren't supposed to run. I'm like, oh, my God. Ah. They started giving me gum. I couldn't chew gum and cry. I can't do that. So finally, I'm like, oh, God, that woman's got to end. So anyway, I get back in the room. Of course, there's my name. You know, and it's not one name that you can erase out and make it something else. Brana. I mean, there's not another one in the world. Oh. Okay, teach your actions. Model speaking and listening skills that build and or strengthen healthy relationships. Use and model strategies that foster equitable participation in the classroom. That's what we're talking about. Demonstrate strategies to get to know others, introducing oneself. And, you know, I realize that some kids are shy and you don't want to force them to be in front of the class to talk or whatever. But if you can get them out of that shell, if you can do some things with them to get them out of that, it's good for them. It's good for them. But I mean, you know, I don't want you to put a little quiet kid up there and say, I know, but you know what I'm saying. Healthy, supportive relationships, classroom environment. Support learners in developing guidelines for classroom communications, like how you do that. Establish class meetings where learners are given the opportunity to interact with each other and practice speaking and listening skills. iMessages, I feel blank when this happens. I need what? I feel sleepy when I eat turkey. I need a nap. But, you know, they're going to do something else there. So anyway, and you want, which I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, you all seem like you got it together, except this one. He's learn names quickly and correctly. And I'll tell you what, too often students, especially those who are marginalized, feel invisible to our schools. They love it when you know their name. When we were principals, we knew all their names. Of course, I only had like 240 kids. So it's pretty easy to know their names, you know. So if I said, you know, hi, Kendra. How'd you know my name? especially if it's early in the year, you know, they're just so shocked and everything. So one little guy, I think I called him something else. And I think I called him his brother's name. And he said, no, I said, well, you know your name, you know, don't do that. But anyway, I was trying to be funny with him. But yeah, so that is really good. And that's why I didn't like my name on the board in a negative way. Students are never too old for show and tell. Kids love to show stuff. They love to tell stuff. You know, I don't know. You kind of got to be careful about what they bring to school. Post student pictures and work. You know, kids love. I mean, you know, don't be like a fifth grade teacher I used to know. Put it on the door, big black F, if you got it, you know. Honey, that was 100 years ago. Surely to God, they're not doing that now. If they are, just get a coup going and kick them out or whatever. But anyway, older students like that too. Everybody likes to be bragged on and looked at and for things that they've done well, you know. Assign seats and change them often. We talked about that. Find small ways to connect, you know, like, Andy, your dad's the sheriff. I'm afraid of sheriffs and policemen. She ran a red light, you know. But, you know, those kinds of things. Okay, that's her story. She did. You ran a red light on purpose?
No, I never on purpose.
Oh, no. Nobody does it on purpose.
The two people in front of me went right on all of it.
So if the two people jump off a ledge, you're going to jump too.
I said, if I ran a red light, then they ran.
Now, this is what she does when they pull her over. Ma'am, you ran a red light. She said, well, for one, he's 12 years old. And then he said, you ran a red light. She said, you got to be kidding me.
This morning, I ran one this morning.
We can't let you two sit together.
He did. I was like, well, Aaron. He said, I'm going to call that. I said, well, okay.
Hey, you got a connection there, though. So, yeah, so she runs a red light. Well, of course, her car's junked up. She can't find her purse. She don't know where her license is. So she crawls in the back like a little, trying to dig for it.
It was 11 at night, people.
So, I'm telling you. Now, riding with her is an adventure. I'm just going to say it. It is, I mean, on Route 80, how bad can you mess up on Route 80?
But did you die? No.
See, that's the question.
You gotta find the positive in anything.
That's right. Yeah. And now she's got a car that, like, it starts beeping if you get off the road. And, like, if I'm doing something, like, oh, God. Oh, you know, she said, I got it. Okay. But I got to tell this last tale on her, and then I'm going on to my stuff. She likes to run out of gas, like, that close. I said, she lives on the edge. We're cousins, so blah. Anyway, we're going down at one of the hills on Route 80, so I just happened to glance over at the E, that close. And so we're just coasting down the hill. I said, oh, dear Jesus, we're going to run out of gas. So we finally coast into that little gas station. Well, I guess I can pray too. Okay, so anyway, creates compassion. You have to have compassion. You have to. I don't know if you can live without it and be a teacher. Like I said, it's not a crutch for your kids. You still want to have the same goals. You still expect the same things out of them, and they respect you more for that because you're somebody that believes in them, that they can do it. Okay, I'm just going to give you this. I think this gal right here. This is just a little activity, like if you want to kind of get to know your kids, you can, like on the way to work, think about 5 kids you want to get to know and just keep them in your mind. And then during the day, you'll kind of watch, look at them, kind of talk to them, see what they're doing, and make a point of engaging those 5 kids. And say, I know he likes, what do you like? What's your hobbies?
Carpentry, muscular.
I can't do carpentry.
I had to keep working on my own stuff, keep tearing it up. I ain't gonna do carpentry.
Okay, say, fishing and hunting. Okay, my brother goes fishing and hunting, or the new Barbie movie. You took your daughter there. Oh, I love Barbie. I don't even want to see that. I mean, it's just too much pink. I can't deal with that. But those are kinds of things you can do. Just kind of keep a mental note or make you a little note. It's something, because if they think there's something that they do or that they're interested in that you are too, oh my God. I found out my first grade teacher liked those little, they don't know what they'll do, that they're too young. The little candies with the white. Anyway, it was like those sugar stick candy things. They come in a little box.
No, not the candy.
No, but those were good too.
It's like vanilla, you know how you can get.
Like the pop rock looking things on a stick?
No. Oh, honey, that's way after me. Anyway, they had the peppermint and the other kind and all that, and she liked the white kind. So I found that out. My God, I don't know how much of the white, and I liked it too, but I took it to my teacher because found her interest, and we kind of connected on that. So, how 5x5 assessments work. If you try this, don't expect it to go perfectly the first time. As with mindfulness, that's the thing. You have to be mindful. Turn that air down before I pass out. I am not going to make it. So choose 5 students to deliberate upon. Pick a time in the morning when you have 25 minutes to think without being too distracted. Maybe on your way to work, but still drive safely, okay? Or maybe you're sitting at home at night watching TV and you're just thinking, because you're always thinking, if you're a teacher, you're always thinking about your students. You're thinking what you got to do. You're always thinking. So I still think about all my students throughout the day, but checking off names ensures that each of my learners receives 300 seconds of dedicated think time at least once a month. And then this just goes through that whole thing. And this is something that they talked about here, just potential warning signs like child abuse. This is like bulimia, or, when somebody's causing themselves to throw up. Those are kind of things you have to kind of keep your eye on. Interact with the focused students the same day. That day, your 5 kids, somewhere during the day, you want to talk to them or just make a little connection with them. For instance, Mike, a couple of days ago, you were talking about your dad's new job. How will that change things for you and your family? Things like that. Okay. Avoid forcing a conversation when your attention is scattered. If you're not totally focused and being mindful, don't start a conversation with them because they'll pick that up every time. Who can turn this thing down before I roast? We can't? Huh? Like on cool, like 60. I'll freeze these people, but wait, I'm about to wrap it up. Okay. You think I could simply listen? Asking for and offering help increases appreciation of differences. That's the one thing, that we need to do, because we don't all have the cute cheerleaders. We can't all be basketball players. We can't all be baseball players. But you may have kids that like archery, they like music. We don't want to put a lot of attention, oh, you're a great cheerleader. I'm not saying don't talk to your cheerleaders, but you know what I'm saying. Not to make such a big deal out of the differences.
Make
Okay.
sure everybody has something
To be,
that they can
make them special.
recognize for.
Standing up for others. I got to stand up for her all the time. Not when the police are involved. No. She's on her own. Appreciate apology or ha-ha. This is a little video, and I'm just going to tell you what it's about because I'm running out of time. But at the end of the day, maybe especially, they did it with high school. Maybe your older kids too. But anyway, the kids can say appreciation. They get in a circle and they can say appreciation, apology, or aha. Aha is something they learned that day or they found out that day, something new. Or if it's an apology, I need to apologize to you, Amber. I need to apologize to you for, and they just kind of put that out. But that's once you get your classroom relationships built where they're comfortable saying things like that. Then, I appreciate the way you've stayed in here. God bless you. I do. Cooperation. We talked about that. Shout outs. Just during the day, at the end of the day, you might want to celebrate. Celebrations is a big thing. You want to celebrate, say, ooh, go, Andy, go. That's old, but, you may have something else you can do. But that sounds good. I want to give a shout out to such and such. Are you dying too? I'm roasted. Friendly Fridays. A fourth, oh God. A simple way for students to lift each other up, Friendly Fridays. You know, to say something nice about each other. Sharing acts of kindness. Okay, these are good. Like at lunch, some things you might want to try with your kids, like sit with someone new at lunch, sit with someone different at lunch, you know. And if you want to find out about your kids, eat with them. You know, you'll find out a lot, but I know you guys are stressed for a little time to yourselves. But anyway, smile in the hallway. Have your kids say, let's just smile at another kid comes up the hallway, let's smile at a teacher. We're going to call 3 smiles today, or, you know, something like that. How to be a nicer person. You got to tell them what it is to be nice. It's being kind and nice is all good on paper. When it comes down to it, many people find themselves lacking in the friends department. Why is that? What it is that makes someone unpleasant to be around, and how can we remedy that? Rather than breaking or tearing somebody down, you got to teach them how to be nice. Sharing acts of kindness. And you can have them, you can tell them, say, were you kind to somebody this week? I want you to tell me tell me about it, or, you know, some things like that. I hate to rush through this because we have so much, but I'm going to give you this one little video, and then after it plays, you guys can feel free to stay because Bernadette's going to have her show next.
Everybody's going through something. We might be in a good place right now, but we've all had times that we went to work and had to shut it out or we could not function. I mean, I've been there myself. So, empathy, and Ronna talked a little bit about this, and I just said a little bit about it, but it's the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. That is the ability to place myself, or yourself, in another person's position. And think about how you would relate to things if you were in that position. It does not mean endorsement. And, you know, one of my friends said that, well, one of my colleagues, because there's one of me in every co-op in the state. And at our first meeting, we were sharing out and stuff, and one of them said, you know, just being empathetic does not mean I'm endorsing anything. And that's what it stuck with me, because, you know, we hear so much. When people hear DEIB, we know what they start thinking. They start thinking, oh, it's about race, all about race. Well, it is. That's one part of it, but not all of it. They think it's about gender equality, and that is a part of it, but it's not all of it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I want you to understand what DEIB is. So let's look at diversity. We are also diverse within ourselves even, but special ed's a diverse population. Poverty is a diverse, but when you look at this right here, it's individual traits and differences which directly impact the engagement, inclusivity, and I had the hardest time saying that word, I don't know where I'm going to get it, it's something about it, and experiences of students such as race is a part of it, ethnicity, socioeconomic, and we know here in this region we do have a lot of poverty, but there's a lot of other places too. Just even being from Appalachia, we're diverse. So, language, gender, it does include sexual orientation, but it's not endorsing different sexual orientation. It's just saying whoever comes to us, we have to educate them, and we have to be kind to them and be nice and work with them. We gender identity, country origin, and we're getting more and more people from different countries, different abilities, personality, and learning styles. So, special ed, gifted and talented is also another one that sometimes we neglect to include, but that is a diverse population. Cultural, political, religious, or any other affiliations, and there's all kinds of differences between us all. You know, we all bring this package with us that we have gathered up all through our life, and it gets us to where we are today, and that makes us different. We're diverse. So let's just talk about this, because there's not very many of us in here and we don't have a whole lot of time. And you don't have to, you don't have to say anything out loud if you don't want to, but I really wish you would kind of think about this and tell me if you have something you'd like to share. So how does your school or district or organization celebrate diversity? So do you all celebrate diversity? I'll tell you one thing I did. And I was doing it before I really even knew what I was doing, but I did it. We looked at different cultures. At the end of the school year, we looked at all these different cultures. We looked at the music for them. We studied that. We did that with them. It depended on what grade level you were in. We looked at the food that they ate. We looked at the language. Of course, we couldn't speak some of it, but we looked at that. Just their traditions, the things that they did. So that's one thing I did to celebrate diversity. And I'll tell you something else that's very important. Having different clubs. We were talking about belonging a while ago. Sometimes we don't have, everybody's not a cheerleader. Everybody's on the ball player. My daughter was a cheerleader. My grandson tried to play ball and he hated it. I mean, he played like 2 or 3 games and we're like, honey, you don't have to do this. But he loved band. Everybody has different abilities and different interests, so it's really important to have a lot of different things that they can belong to. Now, sometimes we think being equal, is being equitable. And I was always so confused with that back years ago, because I think people would say that, I'm not really sure if that's right or not. But it is. Yes, everyone should be provided with equality. Everyone should have what they need to succeed. If I'm a teacher, I should be able to have books just like this other classroom. But when we get into the equity part, it's about providing that extra that kid needs to be able to be successful, or that teacher needs to be successful. There are things that cause us to have to look at each individual classroom. And it says equality is a condition under which every individual, and I'm reading these definitions because I want it to stick with you. Each individual is treated in the same way and is granted the same rights and responsibilities, regardless of their individual differences, abilities, or backgrounds. Everyone should have that. That should be there. Equity in education is fundamentally an effort to ensure that all, and that means all kids, and that's what we're promoting, that all kids have the supports they need to meet their academic standards and to reach their full potential as students, citizens, and human beings. An equity focus in education recognizes that public school students come to us with a variety of backgrounds, and I was talking about that. We all come with this background, and it makes us all just a little bit different. Needs, supports, and experiences, and that we must take those into account when we consider the education of each child. Now, whether you like class or not, that's a big statement, that's a good statement. It's our job to know our kids, like Ronna was talking about with relationships. We have to know them, to have that one thing that we might connect with them on, to where we can help them to be successful. How do you ensure that all your students have equitable access to the supports they need and opportunities? Do y'all have anything that you want to share on that? You're new, so I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on you. I realize that you've not been there that long. But think about your classroom. I think all y'all are classroom teachers in here. So think about your classroom and something that you might do this coming year that you could ensure that all those kids have that support that they need, and give them opportunities. Now, inclusion. And I want you to look at the first 2 words that I had bolded in that. The intentional. Intentional is the key. You have to be intentional. The intentional act of creating an environment that fosters mutually respectful relationships in which students, regardless of intellectual, social, cultural, and geographic background is welcomed, supported, and valued as fully participating members of society. Now, I was talking about earlier, you may have this little kid sits in the back, causes no problem whatsoever. Does that kid feel included? No. And there's nothing that makes me feel any worse than to go into a lunchroom. I mean, about makes me cry because I can't take it. So to go into a lunchroom and see a kid sitting over there by itself, that kid doesn't want to be sitting by itself. We've all been there at one time or another at an event that we've gone to or something we've done. And so you have to come up with strategies to try to help with that. And Ronna gave a strategy earlier. The clock could be used for that, and you could, or something maybe different, but you could pick out 5 kids and let them switch around, or kids can, but you want to make sure they don't always sit. I mean, it's okay if they sit with the same person, but we've got to be inclusive of this other kid. I used to tell my kids, I'd have a kid or something in that classroom, and I knew my kids, and I'd say, you know, can you make them feel welcome and include them? Would you mind to go over and just ask them if they'd like to eat with you? And I had some really good kids, so I was pretty successful at that. But as a principal, it would always break my heart if I went in there and one was alone. So you have to find strategies, and we have all kinds of things that we can share to help you with that, and I'd be happy to. Now, and this goes back to what I was saying, radical inclusion is when you go out of your way to make sure it happens. You know, you are putting things in place, your procedures. When you talk about, he talked about this morning about doing your procedures. When you develop your procedures, think about these things ahead of time. You know, how can I ensure that no kid sits alone in the lunchroom? Some kind of rotating schedule, something, you know, we can provide you some strategies, like I said. So you're going out of your way. If I've got that kid sitting in the back of my room all the time, it's not saying anything, but it's not participating, then I need to find a way to include that kid. I need to make sure it's in a group, that it starts feeling comfortable. I need to reach out to it, not just let it sit back there.
Vern, I was gonna say on this, one of the things that we talk about is like if you have a school council, you know who the kids that are on your school council are always usually the popular kid. I'm just saying that, I'm not sure. But I'm not saying it is or it's not, but we need some kids that are not always in the limelight, and they can give you some good insight into what's going on in your building.
And this is where too, like doing those surveys at the beginning of the school, just a very short little thing. And even if you're in kindergarten, first grade, they can do all things. But just to ask them some of their interest, ask them, you know, if they're comfortable with this, comfortable with that, and we do have some examples of those. But that way, you're getting to know your kids, which is very important. Now, I'm not going to make you all stop and do this, but think about this one. Is there radical inclusion in your district, in your school, in your classroom? Are you stepping outside, not just when it randomly happens? Sometimes we just randomly see that happen, that kid sitting in the lunchroom alone. But if I had known better like I do now, I would have had a procedure in place to where I knew that when they went in there, I was going to make sure different kids had the opportunity to sit with different kids, you know? But you learn as you go. So have that in place to where it's not something you have to fix, although it may still happen. But you have to have things in place to try to help that kid. And if it's already in place, it makes it easier.
And in a time where kids need this, they need social emotional more than I think any other time. But you all have so many resources. Put yourself in there to learn, to grow, to find out if you've got a kid that you're having trouble with. Research, find out, talk to somebody, and see how you can reach that kid. You guys have so many more resources than we did as teachers. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you,
Well,
even 10 years ago.
Exactly, and also, I'm gonna say this, we saw those teachers on there that were going through things, people with the school. You know, be mindful of your fellow workers because they may need some grace, some kindness. There was this lady, I'm gonna tell a story. There was a lady at a restaurant, I'm not gonna say which one, and every morning we drove around and she was mad, buddy. She was in a bad mood, you know, you could tell. And at first, I got frustrated, you know. And then I thought, I don't know what her life's like. I don't know what she's gone through before she got there. And quite frankly, if somebody's asking me for food, I'm not very good at it either. So I probably wouldn't be very, very nice either. So I decided that I was going to be kind to her, no matter what. I was going to show her kindness. And now we're friends. I mean, I drive around and ask her how she is. She asks me how I am. You know, we talk about things. So sometimes just reaching out, just that little bit, it changes everybody's perspective on things, you know, and they realize that I'm not just this person driving around and, walking out what I want. And, although I do like a jelly. But, so sometimes, and there's times that I need some grace. I may come in a bad humor, and I may not be want to talk as much as I typically do. I don't have too many days like that, but occasionally I do. Because I have the ability sometimes to put stuff out of my head if it's bothering me. Thank you, Jesus. But it's still back there bothering me. I can just function and go on, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still troubled. So be there for each other. Inclusion is not access, and sometimes we have this misconception. People say, everybody can, and I've said it. I'm going to be honest, I've said it back in the day. Everybody has the same opportunity to participate in that. Everybody. Well, or everybody has the opportunity to participate in a group or in a club. Well, do I have a club that some kids can relate to, that they're interested in? So being inclusive doesn't just mean that they have access. It means that they are included. I've looked at all the things that interest these kids, and I've tried to provide them with something that is going to pique their interest and help them to be included. Belonging. We all like to feel like we belong, don't we? Nobody wants to go anywhere and they don't feel like they belong. It's a bad feeling. We've all done it at one time or another. There's been something we've done, somewhere we've gone, and we felt like, man, I really wish I hadn't come because I'm really not fitting in here. I don't have anybody to talk to, And so it's very important that every student, and every staff member for that matter, have that experience and they believe and they feel that they're accepted by the adults and their peers, as well as respected as a valued contributor in their learning and social environment. So kids, they want to feel like they are a part of something, and they should feel like it because it's their school, it's their classroom. Teachers want to feel like they're a part of something. When you're in your planning teams, you don't want to be set over to the side. You want to feel like people listen to you. And that's why it's so important. If you start listening to others, they'll start listening to you. Okay, just think about this and take this back with you. And when you're starting to do your planning, be aware of this. How does your school, and this is going to be your classroom, I guess, ensure all students and staff feel a sense of belonging? What happens if you perceive that someone or a group of stakeholders do not feel like they belong? So, plan ahead. What is it you're going to do? First of all, you plan strategies, like I said earlier, that include all students. Activities, strategies, everything. Your lesson plan should relate to all students. You should, and as far as that, like your staff members, think about how you could include them more. So, but with your students, how are you going to create that sense of belonging and make them feel like they belong if it happens? Plan ahead, but if it happens, and you'll know if it happens, because you can see that kid sitting over like to the side or just sits there and never says anything because they're afraid of being wrong. I can remember when I was growing up, I was like, Ron, I didn't talk like I do now. And I would think, oh God, I think I know that answer, but what if I speak up and it's not right? Well, it's okay. It's okay not to be right. I learn more from my mistakes than I do from what I got right. And so I think just creating that environment where they feel safe to speak out. And it's okay if it's wrong. It's not a big deal. You're not going to jump onto them. Nobody's going to make fun of them. Because, when I grew up, they would make fun of us. They'd say, ooh, you got that wrong or whatever. And most teachers would stop that right there. And you can do it without even making the kid feel bad. You just redirect. But let's make kids feel like they are a part of something, like they belong, and that we are there for them. Now, the first thing you have to do to implement this and to start is you start looking at yourself. Start thinking about what your awareness, your self-awareness. What is it that you think about things? How aware are you of other people's feelings? So you use an inside-out approach to become culturally proficient, which is what we want to do. The knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs that enable people to work well, respond effectively to, and be supportive of people in cross-cultural settings. It requires an inside-out approach. Now, an inside-out approach is being aware of how we as individuals and organizations work with others, being aware of how we respond to those different from us, and that's what you start thinking about. How well do I work with others? Do I work well with others? Don't ask Ron. Being aware of how we respond to those different from us. Am I standoffish from anybody that's different from me? Well, what can I do to help myself with that? Understanding the visible and not so visible difference and preparing to live in a diverse world. We live in a diverse world. We've always lived in a diverse world because we've all had our differences. And I used to hear him say, you need to make sure to address the diversity. And I think we did that, but not intentional, like I was talking about a while ago. So here is cognitive dissonance. You have to be aware of that. And this is me, right up here. But here's what I really don't care that much about meat, but I do like a little ham sometimes. And I like a little turkey, but I love an animal. And I cry if I see one beside the road that's killed. I lose my mind on it. So I have these two things going on in my head. Well, it's animal cruelty, but I do like a little ham. So that creates cognitive dissonance, which, and the actual definition is used to describe the mental discomfort that results from holding two conflicting beliefs. I have two different values or attitudes. People tend to seek consistency in their attitudes and perceptions. So this conflict causes feelings of unease and discomfort. And if I think about it, I cannot eat meat. It's true, isn't it, Ronna? I will go months sometimes without eating it because I'm just that way. I get tore up. I'm thinking, oh, that poor old cow. So I really have some conflicting problems about others, but that's just one of my problems. No, I won't. I don't want to run them off. This inconsistency between what people believe and how they behave motivates people to engage in actions that will help minimize feelings of discomfort. So people attempt to relieve this tension in different ways, such as by rejecting, I reject it, explain away, or avoiding new information. So sometimes when we all have our values. I have my values and I stick by them, and sometimes Some things are a little higher on my list, but I've got some that are at the top and they're gonna be there no matter what. And quite frankly, religion is one that's my top. You know, my family, I value my family, I value a lot of things, but those two things never, ever change. And so, I have to remember that not everybody was raised like I was. Not that it was perfect, but it was a good childhood. But you know, just different things have happened to me throughout my life. And everybody doesn't have the same values, you know, and that's okay. It's okay that they don't believe what I believe. We still have to coexist. I'm not there to try to change anybody's beliefs. I'm not there to try to change their values. I'm just there to teach children. And I want them to get the best education possible. And I want them to know that I care and I value them. Now, how does cognitive dissonance present itself when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? Does anybody have an example? I can think of some. You know, I don't believe in a lot of things. I don't believe some things are right. But that doesn't mean that it's not right for somebody else. You know, I can't impose my beliefs on anybody, and nobody's going to impose theirs on mine. I'm going to be good to them. I'm going to treat them kind. I'm going to be good to everybody. And I want everybody to feel like they belong. All my kids need to feel that, and they need to know they're included, and that they're getting an equitable education. And I need to address the diversities and make sure that I'm there for those kids. Now, when we talk about values, I have a little activity, and I don't think we're going to have time to do it. Bronna, get up, pass these out if you don't mind. Just cool off. She just I'll meet her back there. Look at this hair.
She looked good at this one table in the line. That's what I look like when I leave the house. Until I get outside and it all falls apart.
We all need to make sure we live in line with our own values. That's what I was talking about. You're not going to change my values, I'm not going to change yours. If we're out of alignment, our decisions and our behaviors won't feel correct in our minds. They don't help us reach our goals. So values provide the foundation for living. Values are what we prioritize at a given moment in our lives based upon a lifetime of information that we've acquired. So if we were going to do this activity, you'll see, I think it's on the second page, there's a whole list of values. Now, I found it very hard. They had us choose 3 or 4. It was so hard for me because I had so many more that I thought were all right up there in the top, you know. So you may have all of those. But at any given time, some are going to move up a little bit and some are going to move down a little bit based upon what you're going through at that time. So it's very important to realize that and to realize that not only you have values, but everybody else does too, and theirs may not be the same as yours. Begin asking yourself this question: who am I? This is becoming aware. This is, you've heard of the A4 modules maybe, but those modules, and they're part of DEIB, they got us through this process. So who am I? Am I who I want to be for myself? Sometimes it's really good to examine yourself. My family, my students, people that don't share my lived experiences. So with those folks that have different lived experiences than I do, am I empathetic to them? Am I providing what they need? You have to start thinking about this. And you know, one thing that I realized we did a book study on Coaching for Equity. And when I first started out, we had different opinions, a lot of us. But the one thing that I came out of it with was that I did have some biases. Not what I would say were severe, but they were still biases. And also, not only that, but I was using some terms that I didn't realize were even offensive to anyone. And one of my coworkers said, "You do know what that means?" And I went, and she said, and so she told me. So I was actually offending a certain culture without meaning to, because I was using the saying that we had said for years. I mean, it was something that I didn't know. I was like, I didn't know what that meant. So sometimes when we start examining ourselves, we realize that we are offending people without even knowing we're offending them. Of course, people have told me I've done that before too.
She offends me all the time.
My secretary used to say, I'd say, "What's wrong with him today?" She said, "Well, could be that yesterday, maybe you got on to him." Or you said this, and I was like, "Well, I didn't think that was getting on to him." So, what are my values? How do these values connect or not to DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work? Are my values where they should be? So after you've looked at those definitions, we went through all those, do you have kind of a different idea of what DEIB is? I don't know if you all have heard of it before or not, but some people have a misconception that it's only about one or two things. It's just about educating all of our kids. It's about providing them with the strategies that they need, whoever that child is. So, as I said, we're all diverse. So, what I need may be a little different than what Rhonda needs or Mary needs. So, it's an individual thing. This is the activity that you have. And if you want to do this kind of when you go back, it's kind of good to do because it really helps you think about it. And that's what they made us choose, top 3. That's hard to do. You start looking at those, it's really hard because we are made up of so many different things in our life. I mean, all that's important to me. My spirituality is my top, as I said. But all these things that are mentioned there, trustworthiness, I mean, it's hard for me not to have that on top because I really believe in being trustworthy. Compassion. Rhonda talked about compassion. If you don't have compassion for others, then there's a problem. You really need to examine yourself because, and I used to tell my daughter this when she was young, I would say, we are no better or we're no worse than anybody else. That at any given moment, we can be right in their shoes. And keep that in mind that, we don't know what the future holds for us. And usually anytime I've ever said anything about anybody doing something, I end up doing it. Or it ends up happening to me. So,
We were at the bank the other day, so we'll be on the lookout.
we're telling stuff on me. I hope I'm selfless at times. Sometimes I'm not as selfless. So you just go down through here, do a little quiz with yourself, and determine kind of what you value. Empathy, I think, is so. See, it's just so hard to pick just 3. And we're not going to do that, but it does tell you how, and it tells you in your little packet. So I'm not going to go through that, but it does say your ideal behaviors honor what you value. That kind of leads you to it. How many life experiences and values or differ from historically underrepresented students how might I build authentic relationships with these students? So we have some bilingual students. How can we build relationships? Sometimes it's hard if you don't speak that language, but you have to provide them with something. Students with disabilities, socioeconomic, we all have poverty in our area. Black, Latinx, and it just goes on and on. So when you look at that, you think, how can I build relationships? Even though some of my values, we have similar values, similar experiences, but still different. So just kind of think about that. What steps might I take to better understand the experiences of my students? Sometimes just having those conversations, doing those surveys, you learn a lot about them, and they might open up to you. There's going to be some experiences that I'm never going to know what that felt like for that particular kid, because some kids go through some horrific things. But I could be empathetic to them. I could put myself in their shoes and think, if I were there, how would I be feeling? this is so important. We have kids committing suicide. We have young people that are in middle school committing suicide. And, you know, if they just talk to somebody, you know, but when you are young, you feel like everything is so major. When you get older, your skin gets a little tougher. Most of us, it does. And you're like, well, it'll all pass next week, or it'll pass tomorrow. But if we don't provide these kids with some strategies to be able to handle these things, and they don't know that they have somebody, I mean, we're going to lose them. You know, some especially, and you don't know why. I mean, and that's the worst thing I can possibly think of is to lose a young person. I mean, it's awful to lose one anyway. Any kind of accident. But for them to feel so hopeless and helpless that they would take their own life is just so beyond. I mean, you just can't imagine what those poor parents feel. Or even if you're the teacher of that student. I mean, that's going to impact you the rest of your life because you're always going to think, why didn't I talk to them? So be sure if you have any inkling, and make sure your kid has a connection to somebody. And what do these students need that they aren't getting, and how can I be part of the solution? So when you're doing your prepping and you're doing your procedures, think about that. Okay, if I have kids that are different, diverse, how am I going to include them? What's my procedure going to be on that? And if you need help with that, we'll be happy to help you. We all have biases. I was glad to hear that because I'd identified a few of my own, and I really didn't think I had any, but they were unconscious. So many of them are unconscious. We'll say, well, I'm not biased. But then when you start digging down, you're like, well, maybe I am. You know, I need to rethink this. The sooner you know about your implicit biases, the sooner you will be able to recognize these and to grow as a person. And we never get too old to grow. I'm old, but I can still grow and I can still learn. The strategy, too, to get to where we want to be. Now I'm aware of some of my issues. I've examined myself. So do the work. Build your cultural proficiency. And right here is, and I'll share this with you all in your folder, but this is the continuum. Do I want to be on over there on cultural destructiveness? And if you look at some of this stuff, let's just look at one. If you're a bilingual child, and your teacher gets up and says, in this class we speak English only, what's that going to do to that kid? Does it feel like it belongs? No. Right here, and I've heard this said many, many times, you know though that those parents never show up to school functions. We've all said it. You know, I can't say I'm not because I've said it. I regret it now that I know I shouldn't have said it. But I'm like, they never come. That's the ones we need to talk to at parent conferences a lot of times. We don't know though. They might not have gas. They may feel a little put off by the school. Maybe they feel like that the school thinks they're better. Maybe they feel like they're bilingual. They can't talk to the teacher, you know, or something. I don't know. I've said this. I don't see color. I just see kids. I'm like, I don't pay any attention to what color they are. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I love them all. But you know, I have a friend in Jeffersonville, and she said, you know, that's something that really, and she's black, something really tears her up. She said, because I am black, and I want people to see that difference. I'm okay with that. And you know, after talking to her, I realized I've offended people before, you know, and you know, when my daughter was growing up, she had a little friend when she started school. She was half black, had her skin was gorgeous, and that's back in the day when tanning beds first started. So that's all thing. And I was going to tanning bed, you know, baking myself. We should have never done it, but I did. And so My daughter tells her, this is kindergarten, she said, you have got the prettiest tan ever was. And she started calling me black. And my daughter's like, black? No, you just got a good tan. I had never explained that to her. Because we lived in an area where you didn't see I didn't see any difference. I'm like, she just went up. But she probably needed to know that, and it's okay. They're beautiful people. I mean, I have some of my best friends are black, and I love them dearly. And I thought, honestly, I thought I was being not racist by saying I don't see color. But really, I was offending her. And so we have to think about things before we say them. During Christmas time, or let's look at it, we value all cultures. We have a night where parents bring food representing their country. Now, you're getting into pre-competence. You're starting to reach out. And I think probably that's where I was back years ago, although we didn't have a lot of different cultures in my area, we still did. Because we think sometimes the culture is from outside our country or outside our state or it's just within our little community. There's cultural differences. Appalachia, there's nothing that offends me anymore than somebody acting like people from Appalachia don't know anything. I mean, I get mad and far over that if they say, yeah, they're from Appalachia, or when you say you're from it, and they're just like, oh, really? Yeah. So I'm offended by that, and they may not mean anything by it, but, and I hate the saying, barefoot and pregnant. I hate that they think just because you're from Appalachia and drink Mountain Dew, you don't know anything. Well, I like Mountain Dew, and I'm going to drink it. But, and I have probably more education than some of those people saying that. So yes, I'm offended by that. Now, when you get to cultural competence, though, a student made a derogatory remark, and I used it as a teachable moment to remind students of the right thing to do. So that's important, that we're to the point now that we're realizing when we get to cultural competence, we are realizing what is inappropriate and what's appropriate, and we're not going to let that happen in our school. And we are going to use that as a teachable moment. We're not going to scream at kids, but we're going to say, have a lesson. That's another thing. Be prepared. Have your procedures in place. What are you going to do? And here's another one down here, the co-teach model and they talked about the co-teach earlier today. And special education teachers allowing us to have honest conversations about differentiation in the classroom. It's so important to get to that point that we don't just think those special ed kids, and some of you all in here probably teach special ed, but they're not just the special ed teachers. You know who they are first? They're all our kids. They're in our school. They're in our classrooms. That's a special something they need to help them to have the equality or the equity that they need. Then we all strive to get to proficiency. And our school social justice and equity vertical team is doing a great job of embedding cultural relevant lessons into our curriculum. My job as an educator is not only to teach content. Yes, ma'am. Hey, I got the word. Jack, did you give her the look? You know me, I'll try to fix my necklace. One time I was doing a presentation, I have to tell this because it's too funny. I was doing a presentation back years and years ago. I said the youth service at that time. But anyway, my colleague was sitting back there going like this. I said, well, my necklace must be messed up. Wasn't my necklace. I've gone over my time. But they didn't stop me. I never quit until I finished. So anyway, it's just really important that we teach. I've heard teachers say, I teach content. I make sure I teach my content. Well, it's very important that you teach your content, but it's also important that you embrace your role as an advocate for that child and family. Okay, so I guess this is where we will stop at this point. There's more I could go through, but just do the work. build your cultural proficiency. And if you need resources, we are here for you. Biggest thing is start with procedures, think about what can happen, and have a procedure in place so you avoid that problem altogether. And I promise you, if you do these things, you will have greater student learnings and you will have less discipline problems. Any questions?